So. We'll just unmute. There we go. And you got about 2 or 3 minutes. I try to start on time, but
Yeah.
not everybody's punctual. Realtors especially. Notoriously late.
Who us?
We run on island.
Well, that's what I am. Some people should know that I know. Yeah, it's been 16 years. Yes, you yes, you yeah, you know, all,
Wait, we need a lot of people in there. What are you guys doing?
all right, we'll be around over. I know you will. Oh, yeah.
Well, we have another rock salt donuts.
Oh, that's so sweet. Oh, somebody else is on. Mohammed's on.
Good.
Right. Mohammed is pretty new to us. Have you met him?
I have not met him.
He's pretty new to us. Mohammed, say hi to Andrew.
Hi, Mohammed. How you doing?
Hey Andrew, how are you?
Doing very well.
Good.
Understand you're new to us. I haven't met you in person yet, but I hope to do so soon. In the
I
meantime,
hope so.
yeah, in the meantime, if you have any questions throughout the day, just feel free to speak up immediately and ask. You can interrupt me. I don't care.
I sure will.
Perfect. Good to know.
Thank you.
All right. Well, looks like it's just the three of us so far here to start. So do we
Come
want to?
on, as they go.
Yeah.
Shut the door, Ben.
Ben's like, I don't need this anymore. I've advanced beyond the need for
Right.
education. I feel you, Ben. I feel you.
I think it's good to teach also because it helps you like remember all the things.
Let me transfer this over here. God, this is weird because I got a camera up here.
That's easier.
Yeah, come sit.
Okay. I try to say,
Because I'm gonna be facing you.
Yeah.
Away from the camera,
Yeah.
away from the material.
I try to stay on the side in case I need to hop up and leave, but I don't know why I'm being legal.
Well, if you wind up having to leave, I'll just one-on-one with Mohammed.
It's your own personal training, Mohammed.
I'll just sit here and be like, Mohammed, come on, we're going to lunch. We're gonna learn
Oh,
today.
that's awesome. I like it.
Cindy will probably be on too.
Oh,
Cindy
good.
Bennington.
I don't think I've met her either.
She used to be on Lily's team, now she's a fellow agent for right now.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
Everybody make sure to silence your phones, airplane mode if you have to, but you don't really have to do that. But if you can't, stay off your phone while we're learning, just try to put it in, all right? Understanding life happens, I'm not gonna be mad like Mohammed if you gotta drop out or anything like that to take care of stuff, I get it. All right, so today we're talking about Ignite session 13, qualifying potential buyers and sellers. Am I unmuted? Yes, I am.
Yeah, you're good.
Just making sure. All right, so I'm gonna keep my little notebook here in front of me to make sure that I stay on track. And I'm gonna try to stick to the bullet points for the most part, but I do have a tendency to rip, so if I carry on for too long about something inconsequential,
Be like, move on,
just be like, excuse me, sir, this is a Wendy's.
right?
So, what do we need today? Show the slides, participants, oh, we got the slide up, that's good, we're already ahead of the slide, takes 0 minutes, perfect. Today we're covering how to qualify potential buyers and sellers. So, of course, they want me to sit and check in. Mohammed, have you been doing the entire Ignite course? Have you been here each day?
Yes.
All right, cool. Have you been progressing through the success system from yesterday? And how has your progress been?
I'm doing something entirely different because the program focuses on sphere of influence and I don't have that. So I'm going after the low-hanging fruit of the market. I'm going after FISBOs and expired.
Okay, that's a very noble thing, but I don't want you to underestimate your own sphere of influence because you create your sphere of influence as you go just throughout each day. One
Yes,
thing
yeah.
that I do all the time, because I'm kind of a homebody, I don't like to go to things. And one of the things that I do when I'm out, see, my wife, she makes me do all the outside stuff. So I'm the one who goes shopping. I'm the one who takes the dog to where it needs to go. Like I do all that stuff out in the world. And I usually incorporate it into my real estate day. So that means that I'm constantly in front of people at restaurants. I'm in front of people at the grocery store, and even just like the cashiers, the baggers, you know, they may not be able to purchase a home today, but they know people and they interact with people, and who knows, they might get there themselves one day. And so you can cultivate that sphere as you go. And just stopping and talking to people, and you know, it's a little uncomfortable at first, but once you get used to doing it, you can just immediately befriend anybody. And then all of a sudden they're in your sphere of influence. Yeah. So don't forget that. Okay. I believe in you.
Yep.
My kids are always like, Mom, you can talk to a brick wall. I'm like, it's a gift.
It's a gift. It's a gift, but it's also a skill because I never could talk to anybody when I was like in school and high school and even through like the early part of my college. And it wasn't until, I just sort of became more comfortable within myself and just saying, hey, you know what? The worst thing that can happen is somebody rejects me and then I'm right back where I was.
That is,
And that's not that bad.
no,
So getting over that fear of conversation was sort of a big deal for me. But anyway, so yes, Mohammed, they wanted me to check in with you regarding your sphere cultivation. So just make sure you keep knocking on those doors and beating down those.
Yeah, I'm doing that. The people that I'm talking with, like if it's a Fizbo and expired, I put them into command and then I put them on the bi-weekly emails and I
Good.
try to follow up with them.
So you want to know a quick Fizbo trick?
Yeah.
I learned when I first got started, and I did it for a long time, and I only got like 1 or 2 callbacks off of this, but it still was a good exercise that I would recommend for you.
Yeah.
When I got
But
started, I would spend time just when I was driving around. Like I said, I'm the one who's driving around every day, right? So as I'm driving around, boom, there's a for sale by owner sign, right? Copy down the number, copy down the address. Go on to Fayette PVA or whatever county you're in.
Yep.
Look up the owner's name, make sure that they live at that address. Put together a little CMA, put together a little packet that just presents you as who you are and say, this is what I think I can do for you in your home. I can do better than you can do. I have access to more materials. Let me go to work for you.
did you door knock?
No, I would print off a little piece of paper with I would print off a piece of paper with that little packet that I put together. And I would wrap it up in a nice little bow and I would just take it over to people. Then yes, I would knock on their door, but typically people weren't home. And I would just leave it on their door with a little bright ribbon on it that would say, hey, I'm here, notice me. Because you don't want them to notice it in 2 weeks.
Right.
You want them to see it that day. And then hopefully they'll get back to you. And most of the time they won't. And most of the time the true exercise is making yourself work, because that's the hardest part, is work when you're not working. That's the hardest part.
yeah.
And eventually it becomes the easy part. Let's see.
You gotta click through also,
Oh, thank you.
sorry.
Where am I?
Sometimes you have to, sometimes it's a space bar and sometimes it's physically touching the mouse pad. There you go, now hit space bar. There you go.
There we go. All right. It wants me to ask about birthdays. Does anybody have a birthday?
That's just to group people.
Cool.
Skip over it.
Perfect. I would like to skip over.
Yeah,
I feel like I spent 5 minutes on this, like it suggests, so I'm gonna do that.
Yep.
Briefly covering the agenda for the day. We're gonna identify where and how to lead generate for buyers and sellers, which we've actually already covered a little bit of. Pretty cool. We're gonna classify leads by ability and motivation, and we're gonna qualify a buyer and seller in preparation for an appointment. We're gonna start thinking about what you learned today. Let's consider questions that we might have and what we'd like to learn about. You're not gonna find a partner for a 2-minute conversation.
No.
I love the way that these things just assume we have 40 people.
Yeah.
We did actually have a lot of people when this first came out,
Yeah.
but ever since then, it's just been kind of a trickle, which is cool, because that keeps up with the normal flow of real estate.
Well, yes, and some days people have stuff going on and they can't come and.
Totally
some days
agree.
there's other more the people there might be more than. Oh, yeah, now you have
4 participants.
Denise, I think that's Nellie.
Denise and Nellie,
Oops.
what are you 2 doing in here? Did you come here for me? You good little realtors. I knew I liked you.
Oh.
Yep,
I-
of course I did.
I skipped over your quote on accident. You can just read it.
You're perfectly fine. So Denise and Nelly, welcome to class. Like I was telling Mohammed earlier, if you do want to speak up or ask any questions or have any commentary, just speak up. You don't have to raise your hand. Don't type in the chat. Like you're not going to get noticed very quickly if you do that. Just speak up and interrupt me. It's perfectly fine. All right. So the number one job as a real estate agent is to find ways to get in the path of motivated buyers and sellers. You have to put yourself on the path to success, which is what I always say, which I guess is kind of a riff on the Gary Keller quote. So good for him. He goes to the Anderson School of Thought. And what does that actually mean? Like, how do you get in front of these people? One of the methods we just talked about a little bit earlier, you know, is going through and doing the lead generation, like with the for sale by owners. You can hop on things like Zillow and get on their little mailing lists. I don't personally recommend it, but you know, these things cost money, and sometimes you got to spend money to make money. Traditionally, I would say if you are looking at like a lead generation service, you're going to probably want something that's going to only charge you like a commission referral as opposed to like a monthly.
Yeah, I am finally getting out of realtor.com leads. It is, I would never recommend it.
Yeah.
It has been horrible and you're in it for a year and
Mhm.
it costs out the wazoo. And half the time the leads are, I've had realtors click on it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you realize you just took one of my leads? You owe me $500 or what, like whatever. Not worth it.
Yeah, and that's not to say that none of the monthly ones can be good.
Right.
I actually used to be associated with the Dave Ramsey team as an ELP. I don't know if you've ever listened to his show.
Yep.
You know, a lot of people are very opinionated about Dave Ramsey.
Yeah.
But if you get over the opinionated part, the really cool thing is that the people who buy into his product really buy into his product.
Yeah, they do.
And they want to use like his endorsed local providers, the ELPs. Now he costs money.
Yeah.
And that's actually why we got out of it, Maria and I. But it costs a lot of money. You know, he had raised up his monthly, what was it? I forget, it was like $250 a month or something like that, which is not the end of the world, but it's also not cheap.
There's an upfront fee also.
Yes.
Of like a couple $1,000s.
Yes.
Right.
And then you also have to pay the referral fee at the end of it. And then on top of that, we were having to go to like a monthly class where they were constantly breaking like trust laws and stuff like that. So we stopped doing it. But I don't know, that was been a couple of years ago. They might have cleaned that up. It might be different now. The point is, you find whatever lead generation source works for you. There are good spoon-fed lead sources.
I still do Ojo leads, but you pay me.
Yeah.
And their fee is kind of high, but the way I look at it is that's not my only source of income.
Yes.
And if I didn't have that, I wouldn't have those closings.
Well, exactly. And
So,
that's where I come off on it as well, is that even if you have to pay some sort of referral fee that is uncomfortable compared to what you might pay on a real estate team or you know, just a referral out to anybody out in the world, that's still business that you didn't have before.
Yep.
And it's still a culture of cultivation that you are bringing to the forefront. It's getting you in front of a qualified buyer or seller.
Yep.
In my opinion, I think sellers have a little more value in terms of what they bring for you, because even though it's only one property in each case, like you're only getting one property out of buyer, you're only getting one property out of seller up front. You know, hopefully you can get more, but that is very dependent on who you're talking to. When you have a listing allows you to self-advertise. Why do we do open houses? Why do we do MLS ads? You know, why are all our things up on Zillow? It's so that we can get in front of people, because you are the product that you were pushing. It is not the house.
Right.
The house is a commodity. Like that's just gonna sell. People need to have a place to live. Your job throughout the transaction is to provide guidance to your client and make sure that they don't do anything stupid. What you are selling is yourself. You have to come off as somebody who is worthy of your client's trust, somebody who is worthy of that prospect just giving you their time. So let's move forward here a little bit. It's easy to get caught up in the, what a fun word, myth understandings. That wasn't a list, it's a myth of a misunderstanding that blocks success. Now, remember your lesson in day one about limited beliefs. That's what myth understandings are. You have to unlimit your thinking moving forward. So, what myths have you heard of, or what things do you think you know about lead generation? Does anybody have anything to offer as to how you lead generate, like what your process is, and maybe we can sort of break it down into the nimbus of what that is, and then bud out and branch out into a more realistic take. Anybody have anything? 3, 1. All right, nobody, cool. So let's see.
Well, I think a lot of people think it's just hard. Like, I don't know what to say, I don't know who to talk to, I don't have a sphere of influence.
Well, that's true. So
I mean, it's not as hard as we make it.
exactly. That's a really good point, Shine. So like you were saying, it feels hard to do. When I first got started in real estate, now I always kind of make the joke that I am nepotism embodied. My mom is one of the owners of this company. She's been one of the top producing, or at least while she was very active, was one of the top producing realtors in the city for over 20 years. She's kind of in early retirement now, but she still puts her boots on every day, pulls herself up by the bootstraps and goes out there and just knocks down leads and people and is amazing. And I have had the very good fortune to benefit from a lot of that. Both my mom and dad were quote unquote pillars of the community. My dad was a teacher at Tates Creek Middle School and other middle schools in the Fayette County public school system for years. My mom was a teacher before she got into real estate, and then she became, I hesitate to say something like real estate royalty, but like she is within the pantheon of realtors who have had an impact on the Lexington market. In fact, she's coming here today. She's coming here today to help us put together the kind of forms that we're going to be using moving forward. She's still shaping that today. And I'm fortunate enough to have those benefits. You all probably don't have something like that. Probably. You're doing this on your own. And so where I had that guide with me every single day, I got to learn from watching her do those things. You're coming here to classes, you're coming into the office and just interacting with people to see how we function. And the fun part is most real estate doesn't happen in an office. It's important for you to come in because it builds that team and it builds the communication. Builds that trust that you have with your fellow agents, and for them to trust you that you are knowledgeable about what you do because you're putting forth that effort every day. But therein lies the nugget of what we actually need you to do. You just have to put forth an effort every day. And a lot of times what we think is effort really isn't. I'm guilty of that a lot. I'm really guilty
We're
of that.
so busy.
Yeah, well, not only
And doing nothing.
yeah, like within each of your interactions, what are you doing to further your career in a healthy way, right? Like, I'm not talking about going up to people and be like, excuse me, sir, how you doing? I need money, right? Like, I need this real estate transaction. I need it now, and I'm gonna do good for you. How am I gonna do good? Well, I'm gonna put it on the market. There it goes. No. What are you doing to have a mastery over your career? What are you doing to have a mastery over what real estate is? And that is what you need to nurture. It's not good enough to know how to write a contract. It's not good enough to go out there and just knock on doors and do your sphere of influence, leads. You have to gain a total mastery in a very short amount of time because you know that you don't know anything. But every single client that you ever encounter is going to believe that you are a professional, that you know what you're talking about. When you have that confidence and that mastery, it just accidentally slips into conversation. I swear, people around me must think that I only do real estate and Warhammer. All right. There's two things that I'm super knowledgeable about: painting and real estate. And I talk about them nonstop because people just ask me questions because it's just what I've made myself. I am a meme, a caricature of the person who I am. Because I don't just do real estate. I don't just do painting. I do a lot of things, and so do you. But to the public, when they see a house, they have to think of Muhammad. They have to think of Cheyenne. They have to think of Denise. They have to think of Nellie. They have to think of you specifically. I had a friend call me at 11:30 2 nights ago because he was brewing within his own head that he wants to go buy this $1 million house. I didn't know he had $1 million to buy a house. But you know what? He thought of me first, and he thought of me at 11:30, and I answered my phone. That's what you do.
I mean, that's awesome. That's what you want.
That's exactly what you want, because real estate doesn't stop. You don't stop. And that's not to say that you don't have boundaries.
I don't answer my phone past 8 o'clock.
There you go.
It's a hard line for me personally.
Understood.
But-
And it's fine as long as you stick to your own rules.
Yes.
I have always been of the commitment, and again, this is because I watched Maria doing this as I grew up.
Yep.
When I was a kid, she was always on the phone, and I resented it for a long time. For a long time, when I was a kid, I was like, well, Mom's just always on the phone, and she doesn't care about us, and we just want to spend time with Mom. Well, Mom was putting food on the table. Mom was paying for my college. You come around to the idea. And now, if your personal thing is that you're never going to go door knock because you don't feel safe, that's all right. If your thing is that you don't want to answer the phone after 8 p.m., that's actually very good. That's incredibly helpful.
I used to be a teacher too. I have a lot of, I have a lot of boundaries.
There you
It's a hard
go.
line for me.
There you
My
go.
phone goes silent from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. I don't answer it ever.
That is so impressive. I can't imagine.
It's amazing. People text me at 10:01. I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't see it. Take
Huh?
it down. I don't see it light up. I don't see nothing.
And that is perfectly fine. Just because I tell you what works for me
Yeah.
does not mean that it's necessarily going to be the same thing that works for you. Again, this is that creativity and building of the community. We can all find ideas off of one another, things that work for us within our own business, as long as it works. Because it's kind of like, there's this old movie, and I hesitate to say it's old because it came out when I was in high school. But there's this old movie called Fight Club. All right.
Don't talk about Fight Club.
In the movie and in the book, although I haven't read the book, but in the movie, there's this line where they say, in Project Mayhem, you choose your level of involvement. Well, that really applies to real estate. Real estate may as well be called Project Mayhem.
Yeah.
And you absolutely choose your level of involvement. I am a career realtor who has been in it in some way, shape, or form since I was 13 years old. I'm 41. I am still beautiful and youthful, and it's because I choose my level of involvement.
Yeah.
I don't do a lot of the really hard work stuff. I do the constant light work. You know, I will always answer the phone. I will always be ready to stop whatever game, movie, dinner, I don't care, and just go and look up the thing right then and there. And sometimes that's to the detriment of my fun. But I tell my people around me, I said, look, you know, real estate affords me a lot of opportunities,
Yeah.
but when I have to work, I have to work. And I can't afford not to work because I will starve. And my wife will divorce me and I will lose my dog and my cats. And I don't want to lose my dog and my cats.
Yeah.
The wife is okay. I can do without her. No, she's wonderful. Don't let her hear that.
This is recorded.
It's okay.
You're not saying.
Just saying. So how do buyers find their agent? Okay. Enough about how you get in front of the agent. How does enough about how you get in front of the client. How does the client get in front of you? So all buyers, first time buyers, and I don't know what that word says because it's behind a thing. Repeat buyers, that makes sense. Referrals from friend, neighbor, or relative. Do you notice the spike in numbers there? Do you notice how it goes from 4, 5, 7, 13 up to 47, 57, 41? That's because, like I was saying, you need to be first and foremost in people's minds. If you can work your circles so that your best friend thinks of you first when he's talking to his dentist, and his dentist goes, man, I've been looking for a house recently. You know, then at that point they can go like, oh, you should talk to my best friend Nellie. She's amazing. Oh, you should talk to Cheyenne, my neighbor. She's incredible. You can do that if you get first and foremost in people's minds. And sometimes you have to be a little bit annoying up front to get there, but not too annoying. You don't want to just constantly talk about real estate. You don't want to be sitting there watching the UK game, and the next thing you know, you're like, man, I can't wait to sell DeMarcus Cousins a house.
Right?
You know, like, just let it come up naturally. People will start asking you questions the longer you're in it. And most realtors suffer for the first couple of years. It's hard.
It is hard. It's hard to be consistent,
Yes.
and it's hard to know what to say. And until you master that, you're gonna kind of flounder.
Sharon, how long did it take you to sell a house?
Uh,
When you first got started, from the day you got your license until you got your first closing?
a year,
A year?
but I was still teaching.
Okay. I mean, most people are still
I
doing
was still teaching and had 3 kids, and my husband's a coach, so he's gone all the time. But I listened I listened to everything I could get my hands on all the time.
Perfect.
So that helped me a lot, but it took me a year.
Denise, do you care to share how long it took you to get your first sale from the time you got your license until your first sale, whether it was a listing or a buyer? Are you there?
Trying to count up. It was April to November was my first closing. About 6 months, maybe 7 months.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty in line with where I was at too. And I imagine that you had a lot of stuff going on at that time in your life.
I did actually. I got my license in April, and I think I came to Keller Williams in June.
Yeah.
I think I'm not sure, but yeah, I had a heart event, so I had two stents put in my heart, which I didn't realize threw me into a depression. So I really didn't want to get out and talk to anybody or do anything, because I felt like I was damaged goods. But I
mean,
think actually coming to Ignite and coming to the office every day really helped me, being around other people, other agents, And we had events like we seem to be starting to do now, and that helped a lot.
Very good. Well, Denise, I've known you for a long time. I had no idea that that was how your career started. I guess you and I
Yes.
never talked about that before. That's incredible. Like I'm super
Yeah.
grateful for
Yeah, my license. I
sticking with
had
it,
to put
especially
my
after.
license somewhere within 2 days, or else I was going to lose it.
Oh no, yeah, we don't want you to lose it. Well, you've been amazing, and in my opinion, you are. In my opinion, as somebody who's known you for what now? It feels like at least 10 years. I don't know what the timeline
Yeah.
is, but
Yeah, 12.
yeah. Um, you were one of the best realtors I can think of when it just comes to pounding the ground and working your sphere of influence and making that work for you. And
Wow, thank you.
I'm sincerely very proud of you over these last 10 years. I think you've done great, and I think you've really blossomed. And what you were just describing is a very good example of how getting started and just working within your own sphere can bring this up. So 7 months in, a year in, it took me as the embodiment of nepotism, it took me 6 months to have my first one. I had gotten my license with my dad at the same time. It was right during the beginning of the market crash. I got my license in 2008. The market crashed immediately, and it had already begun to crash, but it landed on the ground and then went down into the dirt in that first 6 months that I had my license. And then I was, again, super fortunate, and this is something you can do too. In order to try to secure listings, you can work with like an REO company.
Yeah.
Well, what's an REO company? Well, these are companies that go out and have the unfortunate business of repossessing homes from people. Now, a lot of people, there's some very strong feelings about that, and that's understandable. But at the end of the day, the house is going to get sold to someone, and they need somebody who's willing to put in that work, time, and effort. And so for the first 6 months of my career, all I did was call REO properties. I would try to scrounge up short sales. I would look for homes that were the owner was unable to pay for their mortgage for whatever reason they had, and they were going to go into foreclosure. Well, it's better for everyone involved.
Yeah.
It's better for everyone involved to not go into foreclosure, to simply get a short sale.
Yep.
Most people today have no idea what a short sale is.
Yeah.
Like, when was the last time you worked a short sale? A short sale means that the seller cannot afford to pay their mortgage. They cannot afford to finish out the contract that they have, the mortgage with the bank, and they're floundering, getting ready to get foreclosed on. And you've got to sell that property. You've got to get the bank to agree to the lower price that's coming up short. It's not going to pay off the mortgage. That's the short part of a short sale. Nothing else about it is short. It takes a long time. It takes like 2 to 3 months to close these things, sometimes longer if there's a lot of liens and debts that need to be taken care of. We're in a much healthier market right now than we were in 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And sometimes you're seeing foreclosures again. Sometimes you're seeing short sales again, and that's a market that you can pursue. And the way you get into those is by talking to the actual lenders. Whenever we have these real estate luncheons, like Denise was mentioning, just coming into the office and meeting people. Whenever we have these real estate luncheons, sometimes those are sponsored by a lender. You meet your preferred favorite lender, whoever they are. You start talking to them about their business and what they do. People love talking about what they do.
Yeah, they
And so
love talking about themselves.
yes. And so you befriend those people, and then they start recommending you out to various services, and they can even get you on board with some of these different REO companies. I'm trying to remember what the names of the ones that I was with. It was Countrywide while they still existed. And then Green River or something, Green River Capital maybe was what it was called, I don't know.
There's actually a class, it's like a 30-minute class you can take on, doing those REO, short sale, all those kind of properties, how you find them, how you can make quick money doing them. It's on KW Connect.
Perfect, take that
The
class.
lady's name that teaches it is Christina something. If you wanna know more information, let me know. I think I still have an email about it. And then you can take a longer class where they really dig into it and it's like a couple $100.
Well, and the good thing about that at the time for me was that it taught me how to very earnestly do a market analysis. Because you have to really dig in. It's doing what's called a BPO, a broker price opinion.
Yep.
And that is basically one step short of an appraisal. Doing a BPO made me really understand how to value the market and how to value a home within the context of the current market. I mean, there were houses that we had that in today's market would be 2 million that we sold for 600,000.
Yeah.
You know, like.
Can I interrupt?
Yes.
Okay, so how can you do those? Like the ads when you have like an extra bedroom or the square footage or a bathroom, how would I know how much I should add or subtract from the house that I'm running the comps for?
So we're gonna actually cover that in another class in a few days, when we do the CMA class. But I think I'm signed up to do that one. Anyway, the way that I do that is, you can kind of Google the relative today cost of what it would take to install a bathroom, to install a garage. I know that Forbes has a yearly printout that they do that sort of covers the various costs of adding things to homes. I actually just used that about a month ago when I was doing some CMAs for a property that I had listed in Nicholasville. And a lot of the homes that were around that property had one less bathroom than my property had. And there just weren't any comps that took care of that. So when I was doing my CMA, I had to go back in and say like, well, okay, so if an appraiser is going to come in and adjust for this extra bathroom that we have that nobody else has, how much should we anticipate that that appraiser is going to apply a credit to our house versus all of these other homes in this appraisal? Because that appraisal could come back low and then we're in a world of hurt. You know, now all of a sudden we've got to come down in price off of the agreement, or the buyer's going to have to come up in price, which in that price range they're probably not going to be capable of. And so we had to really sit down and think about that. And I used that Forbes list that I just Googled to find out, hey, what does it cost on average in the United States to install a bathroom? I just Googled it and Forbes was kind enough to provide me a list. Back when I first got started, I had this book that broke all that down, but that book is now 30 years old. And I mean, it was 10 years old when I got it. And I mean, I got it before I was even a realtor. You know, I picked it up from my mom in early 2000 and it had the cost of a half bathroom being $500, which is insanity for today. If you can find somebody
You
to
can't even find a vanity for $5.
exactly. So one thing to consider is that the cost of installation is not the same thing as the value approximation. You know, like the sky is the limit with what it costs to bring something new, you know, the cost of materials used. I mean, if you have a golden toilet, then that golden toilet's not going to come out of the house value. They're going to be like, well, I just want a toilet. It doesn't have to be golden. If you want to take the golden toilet and replace it with a porcelain one, that's perfectly fine by me. You know, preferably don't give me just an outhouse. You know, that'll be a different valuation in negative. But the point is that when you are going through and qualifying each of these houses, you can actually account for all of these things. And you need to learn how to do that, and we will cover that in another class. For now, just so I can kind of speed us along here, because I think I spent way too long talking about that.
It's okay.
You gotta remember that the NAR collects data every year on buyers and sellers, their experiences with real estate transactions. More buyers are finding their agents through referrals and from any other source, which means that more people that you know are an agent have more potential. You must help them with the home purchase and more likelihood of more referrals. So the more people you know, the more likely you are to get a referral from them, especially if they associate you first. So get comfortable just talking to people. That's important. Let's see. I think we can move to the next one. Yep. Sellers, on the other hand, like buyers, they're finding their agents through referrals. There's a higher percentage are using an agent who they have bought or sold with before. And there's a great reminder to follow up, and that it isn't just for new leads and contacts. I have an amazing habit of making good friends with all of my sellers. One of the biggest criticisms that you'll see online of realtors is that, oh, a realtor's not your friend. Oh, unless they are, you know. There you go, tour guide, consultant, therapist, advisor, and best friend for 3+ months. Exactamundo.
That's what my shirt says.
Yep.
Pretty clever.
When you take the time to actually get to know your buyers, when you check in with them, I mean, you should be talking to them multiple times a week. If you have a buyer and you're not talking to them multiple times a week, they are not your client. You know, like they can very easily be out of sight, out of mind. And
Find someone else.
they will call someone, they will go to an open house without you. They will do any number of things because they're a real person just the same way you are. And real estate, whatever their transaction is, that's on their mind every single day. You need to be first and foremost in their mind. If you have a buyer, check in with that buyer, in my opinion, no less than every other day. All right. And even if that's just like sending a text, just saying, hey, saw this house, what do you think? Or, hey, how's that loan coming along? Do you have your pre-approval yet? Oh, I had this idea and it made me think of you. It was just funny. You know, anything. All right. Just find a way to communicate with the people that you are actively trying to communicate with. If you cannot be present, they won't be present for you either. You know, like we were talking about earlier, I answer my phone literally any time of day. That's just another way for me to keep in touch with people, because I believe that if I don't answer, they will call somebody else. Now, that's not always true. And that a part of that is my little caveman brain just instilling fear in me, but it's what works for me. So you do you, boo-boo. We should maintain relationships with our clients post-transaction for future business and referrals. I have several friends in my life on a day-to-day basis who I have sold a property to or have sold a property for. I've got some friends who live out in Georgetown. I invited them to my wedding. They started out as clients several years ago. We had this really funny interaction where I sent them this music video from a band called Diane's Word, who since then has had like a lot of really weird controversies, and we're not here to get into that, but at the time they were just this weird band, and they were like, who sends that kind of thing? And they're like, well, I guess your friend sends you that kind of thing. And since then, we've been joking about like, yeah, we became friends over music videos. They sent me David Bowie's Black Star. So yeah, like you make friends with these people and then they stay your friends because you just continue to interact with them. One of the best things that my mom taught me that I practice every single day when I'm driving around town doing my thing, if I drive by a house that I sold, I text that client. I just say, just drove by your house. Hope you're doing good.
Yep.
Hey, I'm in the neighborhood. Your house looks great. I saw the shutters that you painted. What a great look.
People love to think that you're thinking about them.
Yes, exactly. And it's just that checking in with people. When I go to the grocery store, I know this guy at the grocery store, his name is Kevin. He pushes the carts. He's been at my grocery store for the last 15 years, and he's only ever been a cart pusher there. I have no idea what his life is like, except for that every single time I'm there, I'm like, hey, Kevin, I know his name. I read it off of his tag. I just address people by their name. I never say, hey, what's up, man? How you doing, brah? Sup, girl?
My teenager called bra with it. I'm like, I'm not bra. Like, what are you doing? Not your bra.
Bruh. But if you can learn somebody's name, utilize it. That will also help you to remember who they are. Okay. Like apart from them, you don't want your clients to be a commodity, is what I'm trying to say. You don't want them to just be this stack of paper that got you money one day. They're a real person and they have a real life, and you can participate as a part of that. In fact, as a major part of that, because you are guiding them through what is very likely the largest transaction that they will ever participate in, with life-changing money and consequences. So keep that in mind. You have not just the friendly commitment to them, but the professional responsibility to them as well.
Fiduciary duty.
So let's see here. So we got through that one. What did I do? Oh, that's the slide. Okay. What a weird looking slide. Why did they put a laptop screen up there? So as you've been experiencing, Keller Williams has a defined model and system for everything you need to do in real estate. Likewise, Keller Williams has its own language like leads and contacts, which you're already familiar with. Opportunities is a word in command that we use to define your sales pipeline and business. It tracks all of your potential deals or transactions as they move through your sales pipeline. It is a best practice to put your A, B, and C potential clients into the opportunities pipeline in command to track their progress. You can see on the screen, or when you open up command opportunities, that it will track your clients from the cultivation stage all the way to the closing and getting paid. Opportunities even projects your possible total income and your sales pipeline. To learn more about using opportunities, check out Command Your Business on Connect. Has anybody in here already used Command?
Everybody should be using command. We've been talking about it since day.
Have we? Good.
Absolutely.
Excellent. When Command came out, just like anybody else, I was skeptical of new things. I fear change, but you know what else? Command's pretty cool. Once you understand how to use Command, it's actually remarkably simple. And I recommend taking the time to learn how to do that. It is worth your time. That having been said, do not completely rely on Command. As I have been saying, make sure you reach out and touch those spheres on your own in your own time. It's good to have something like the 30, what is it up to, 30 whatever touch?
Well, you can set tasks to remind you.
There you go. I have a task in my phone every day. Every single day at 9 a.m. I get a task reminder notification that says, what can I do for mom?
That's really sweet.
It's sweet, but it's also important to my survival.
Instead of recurring tasks. So if you know you want to check in with Joe Bob
Yeah,
once a week on Mondays at 9 a.m., you can set it for that.
perfect.
Okay, the recurring thing is pretty new. It's within the last couple of months, but you can run your entire business through Command.
That's excellent.
It is so much better than it was even when I started.
That's amazing. So then I have stuff I need to learn about commands.
Yes.
It has changed since I learned.
Yep.
Which is another important lesson to learn. Real estate changes often while you're not looking,
Yep.
which is why it is important to always be working, even when you're not working.
Yep. So I can see, like, I have 40 opportunities right now in my command, like not for right this minute, but that's my pipeline. So I can see what I have coming, what is right now, what is in 6 months, what's in a year, but I know what's in there because I actually put them into my opportunities.
Cheyenne, you and I are gonna have to talk about how that works.
Yeah, it's amazing. If you use it, it's amazing.
We share ahas because they are powerful and meaningful insights that come from the reflection and experience we're having. I just had an aha about community. We shared them out loud. We further strengthen the power of the aha. Aha! That's how it goes. It's a good idea to jot down your ahas in your participant guide. Has anybody had an aha moment so far today? If you do, let's hear it. If not, I'm sorry that I have failed. Man, that sucks. All right.
Speak up, guys.
All right. So you've probably heard the phrase ready, willing, and able, or ready, able, and willing in many contexts. In real estate, we think about this order a little differently. We say able, ready, and willing. When we are classifying our potential buyers and sellers. So why do we start with able? And this is actually super important. This is the biggest reason why we're here, because today's class, as a reminder, is qualifying these buyers and sellers. We've talked about qualifying yourself, but what about them? Even though all leads and contacts have potential, they're not all going to close on a home next month. Some contacts may not be able to buy or sell at this time. A potential buyer might need time to save money for a down payment or work on credit worthiness to be able to obtain a mortgage. A seller might not be able to sell because they do not have the full rights to the property or have non-mortgage liens on the property. We start with able so that we can devote the right amount of time and resources for each potential client based on their needs and where they are. Remember, the first C in WI4C2TES is customers always come first. I want to talk about that a little bit. Focus becomes increasingly possible in direct proportion to how clear you are about what you want, when you want it, and what you must do to get it. One of the first questions I ask every single buyer that I have is, have you been pre-approved? I will give everybody one. All right. I will go, it is to me more important to go and meet the person, to put a face on who I am, to make myself real to them, than it is for them to be qualified because my time is not that, my time is too valuable. I have buyers who I have been working with currently for over 6 years to get them to a place where they need to be, and we are tangibly close, but we're not there yet. But again, that's that creating a friend out of a client. You know, you're talking about working with them to get their trust, working with them to communicate and just have that integrity within your profession. Remember what I was telling you about how to every single buyer, you're just a professional realtor. They don't care how much, like they have no idea that real estate school doesn't teach you how to be a realtor. You know, they don't know that. You're not going to tell them that. You know, you're not going to be like, well, actually, I'm unqualified. You should talk to Andrew and us. You know, you're not going to do that. You want the client, and we want you to have the client. But you have to work that every day. One of the biggest letdowns I ever had in my career, and it taught me a lesson. All right. Taught me a lesson that I hang on to. I'll never forget it. I had this client probably around 2014, 2015. Okay. He was a chef. He's moving here from Atlanta. He had a restaurant that he was closing in Atlanta. He wanted to move to Kentucky because he had a girl up here that he wanted to be with romantically, and they were going to build a life together. And she was from here, and she wasn't going to Atlanta. So he comes up here, and somehow he lands on my front desk And I wound up talking to him. I didn't know the guy, just called on a lead. I think we had if I recall correctly, I think we had a listing. He called on the listing and I went and showed him the house. He started working. All right. Like I said, you're always marketing yourself. So I had really just started getting into the actual qualification of buyers. Like I had only worked at that point through it must have been before 2014, 15. It had to be closer to 2011, 2012. I had only worked on that point through these REO properties that I was telling you about. I was really good at cleaning out houses. I was really good at evicting people. I was not really good at qualifying buyers. Okay. I was more eager to please than I was to rock the boat and set up my own boundaries. Okay. Like we were talking about before, your boundaries are very important. The boundary in question is pre-approval. Okay.
I'm struggling with that as well.
If you talk to a buyer, let me see if this is partially covered on this page. Able, willing, ready. Yeah. Able, willing, ready. All right, hang on a second. Get to that page. All right. If you're talking to a buyer, you got to make sure that they are capable of buying a home. You can show them every house on the entire market and they can't buy it. All right. People have bad credit. People have a crappy debt to income ratio. People have no down payment. People aren't veterans to qualify for zero down. There's so many different hurdles to get over in the home buying process that as a new agent, you don't even understand because you don't do loans. You don't do loans. That's not where you're from. Now, some of you are former loan officers, or at least I've had them in my classes here before. But those people just happen to have a leg up that you don't have. How do you qualify these people? Make friends with the loan officer, say, this is Mike Kimbrell at BB&T. He's not there anymore. He's retired, so I'm going to use his name. This is Mike Kimbrell at BB&T. He's amazing. He's been a loan officer for over 30 years, and I trust him implicitly. What he tells you is the word of God when it comes to your loan. He will tell you if you qualify, what you qualify for, and if you don't qualify, he will tell you how to get there. Communication and education are important when it comes to your referring contacts. Okay. Don't just throw people out to the wolves because there are plenty of wolves out there. Get good at learning who to trust within the industry.
Have a list.
All right. So back in 2011, 2012, I had this buyer and I showed this guy 4 houses. That's it. Showed him 4 houses. But here's the trick. On the second house that we looked at, he made an offer. I was ecstatic. I wanted to sell that house. It was like $350,000. To that point, it was the biggest house I had sold. And I've been in it for like 4 or 5 years. But again, I was doing all those REO properties, which are typically like 60 to 150,000.
Yeah.
Some of them a lot lower. The least expensive house I've ever sold was $17,000. I defy you to find a cheaper property that actually has a house on it. I dare you. This guy wanted to buy this house. We put in an offer and it got to a point where we were doing negotiations for repairs and he just backed out. And I was like, oh, that's unusual. You're just gonna, I don't feel like there's that much wrong with this house that you're gonna back out. But I mean, I guess it's your prerogative, it's your money. If you don't want the house, you don't want the house. Okay. Well, almost immediately, the following day, he puts an offer on another house. Okay. Well, this agent asked me for the pre-approval. I didn't have it. And I asked my guy, I said, hey, so We didn't have it last time, but this seller is asking for a pre-approval letter, and that should be pretty standard. Just talk to your banker, get them to send you the letter, and it'll be fine. He goes, okay, well, my banker's in Atlanta, and I'm like, well, that's all right. He can just email it to me. It'll take him like no time. Because that's standard practice. I've been doing this for 5-6 years. And I got pre-approval letters everywhere. I can pull up pre-approval letters for all kinds of people. I can get them in minutes. But he said, well, I'll talk to him. I'm going to go back in like a week to Atlanta because I got to officially close my business. And once I've done that, I'm going to have some extra cash, and that's going to influence my approval. So I just want to make sure that we do that. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's odd because, we can just kind of get literally any pre-approval. It doesn't have to be your loan. It's just the pre-approval is to say that you qualify at all. And, but whatever, I'll tell the guy. And so, the guy was like, okay, well, we'll wait for him to come back from Atlanta. And how's that inspection coming along? And I said, oh, the inspection's tomorrow. Well, do the inspection. Well, the inspection happens. This guy's paying for inspections. Right? Get to the inspection, comes up. I don't want that house anymore. It's going to cost too much to put in a security system. I'm like, that seems really odd, but okay. That seems like an odd reason to not buy a house. This is 2 odd reasons in a row. But I mean, if you don't want the house, it's your prerogative. If you're pleased, man, I'm not going to tell you what to buy, just as long as you buy something. And guy went to Atlanta, came back after we got out of that house. Went to Atlanta. I didn't see him for a month. It was kind of a relief. He came back, and when he came back, he's like, all right, I was able to sell my business for a little bit more than I thought I could. So now I want to look at $600,000 properties. And I'm like, holy smokes, this is the biggest thing I've ever sold.
Right.
Absolutely, we'll look for that. And there were some weird things that he was really wanting in a house, which included an oven with a bread warmer, which at the time was super not common. Like that was something that you would find in like a professional kitchen as opposed to a home kitchen, which now you see like little things like that a little more regularly, but at the time that was pretty rare. And Sherry Butler, who was a realtor here with Keller Williams before she retired, Sherry had this house listed up in Ellerslie, and I want to say it was like $450,000. And this house had every single qualifying point that this guy wanted,
It's less than what you-
including a bread drawer, and it was less money, including a bread warmer. He had zero. It's a brand new house. It's like a year old. There couldn't be anything wrong. And I told her, I was like, hey, so I've been asking this guy for his pre-approval letter for like 2 months. Is there any way that you could just, and I just said this to her privately. I know I'm not supposed to do this. Just said, hey, look, can you just write into the contract that you have to see his pre-approval letter, which is pretty standard now.
Yeah.
A lot of times we ask for pre-approval letters from other people's buyers, but at the time that was very not common. And she agreed to do that. And they gave us 3 weeks to get him a pre-approval letter. It was 3 weeks. It just had to be there by the end of the appraisal, by the end of the appraisal period. And we're sitting there the last possible night of him getting the pre-approval letter. I've been asking him for 3 weeks just on this deal that is a perfect house for a pre-approval letter. And then he accused me of racism and gave me the finger,
Oh, nice.
literally. And then he asked for a release. And I was like, you are released.
Yeah. Learned your lesson the hard way.
Yeah, like you are released from any obligation to me as well.
Yep.
Like, I'm sorry, my friend, but no.
Yeah, we're done.
And that's the boundaries thing. I had to learn that the hard way. I had to get dragged through the mud for 3 months just to qualify a buyer. And I don't do that anymore.
No.
I'll never do it again. I'll never, ever give somebody the opportunity to damage my reputation within the real estate sphere, because that's a sphere also. A lot of times, agents that you work with will quit or retire. And they can say, well, that Andrew guy was super nice, and my friend came over and talked to me about real estate. I'm gonna recommend Andrew to them. I'm gonna recommend Cheyenne. I'm gonna recommend Nellie. I'm gonna recommend Muhammad, Denise. Like, all these people that you interact with have an influence on your career and on your outcome of your life. Like, it seems weird to say that, but this is time that you're spending. This is your own energy that you're spending and the effort.
Yep.
These are days, hours, minutes, seconds spent interacting with people who either don't earn your trust, aren't worthy of your trust, or who just don't need that commitment from you.
Mhm.
And you have to find a way to qualify them. And just like if you were dating, hey, Marta, just like if you were dating someone, right? Like that's actually a funny thing I do. I treat almost every single client I have as if I'm dating. I will be there. I will come correct. I'll be upfront. I'll be presentable. I'll wear deodorant and clothes. I'll do my hair. You know, I'll treat every client with the respect of somebody that I'm pursuing romantically. With the respect of
Yes,
pursuing
yes.
romantically. I won't pursue them
No. You
romantically.
should never have a relationship with a client.
Exactly. But as far as how you treat them, all right, in terms of professionalism, in terms of integrity.
Yep.
You come correct every single time and you expect the same from them. You don't want to be in an abusive relationship with a client.
Nope.
All right. And that means them abusing you also.
Yep.
All right.
So,
Yeah.
I just lost what I was saying. Never mind.
If it comes back to you, feel free to come back to it. So let's see, in session 11, convert possible business into profitable business, we covered how to convert leads into appointments. And then in session 12, nurture relationships, we covered staying in a relationship with contacts who are not ready to transact. But how do we know whether our potential client is ready to close for an appointment or close for a continued relationship? Anybody have an idea how to do that? We've talked about it a little bit, but does anybody have input there?
Well, you're trying to qualify them. You're asking
Yes.
all the right questions.
Correct. What are some of the questions that you would ask?
Well, I always have to have a pre-approval myself to move forward to try to look for a house.
What about for a seller?
For a seller,
Mm-hmm. Like if you're
you need to make sure you need to make sure that they're the decision maker. You might have someone who is in a house by themselves, but they may have a spouse that's living somewhere else, separated or whatever. So you need to make sure that they do own and are on the deed to be able to sell the property.
That's a really important one. In fact, that reminds me of another situation that I had probably around 2008-9. It was on a property that we were listing, and this woman had purchased the house. She purchased the house before she was married. She got married, she got divorced, and then she got married again. And then in the second marriage, they decided to sell the property. Well, the first marriage had never done a quitclaim deed. And because Kentucky's a dowry state, at the time, we were told that we needed to track down that first husband and find him for a signature because he had a stake in the property.
Mm-hmm.
And so that husband wound up having not been spoken to for 8 years within that sphere, within that client's sphere. And then he had moved to Kansas. And so we had to track this guy down and find him. And if we would have just done more footwear, I mean, you never think to ask like, well, have you ever been married before this marriage? Nobody ever asks that. But what you might ask is, you know, is there anybody who could potentially have a stake in this deal? Like, did your father give you down payment? You know, did you co-sign with your mom? Did you have a fiance that you co-signed with when you first got the loan and you never got married? You know, like a business partner. Um, business partners can be a big one, especially now that we're seeing a lot of LLCs.
Yep.
You know, there's a lot of different relationships that can have a qualifying interest within a home. And you need to check and make sure that just because you're talking to the most communicative person, that doesn't mean that they are every person involved. So definitely make sure that you do that. Am I on the correct screen here?
If they're buyers, I also ask about like, well, I had a client the other day say, well, should we go ahead and get pre-approved? Even like there were some issues with her credit. She wasn't gonna qualify for what she wanted to, but she wanted to go ahead and get pre-approved anyway. And I was like, when is your visa up?
Mhm.
Because that has a big
There you go.
thing to do with when you buy.
Yes.
Most people can't afford 2 payments,
Correct.
right? I mean, so
That's a
I
really-
said, when is your lease up? She said, not till June. I said, well, then let's just wait.
Yeah,
Because if you need some time to get your credit up, that will afford you the time, and you can't move out till June anyway,
yes.
or May,
Mhm.
maybe, but let's just wait.
That's a really good point also, is that sometimes buyers have prior obligations that they have to take care of.
Yeah.
I actually have a client right now who's in the process of buying a home, is supposed to close next week. Their lease is up at the end of February. They've gotta work with people's time frame windows. You know, I started showing them property in earnest about 4 months ago. We've been talking for about, 4 or 5 months before that, trying to get them ready and get them, set their expectations accordingly. I had them set up on a client portal so that they could begin to understand the market within the context of today's market.
Right.
And came time for them to buy. They were ready, they were prepared. We got them a house. Donezo. So when we have someone who is able, ready, and willing and motivated to do business soon, those are A, buyers and sellers. Our number one goal is to secure the appointment and close the signed buyer's agreement or a listing agreement. That is important too.
Hey, Andrew,
Yes.
I had something else too.
Sure.
I was talking to a gentleman last night.
Yeah.
You guys will be happy to know that I got started on my goal for next week. Actually, I had 4 real estate conversations. I actually had an appointment last night right on the spot. And
Nice.
I asked for a couple of their appointments, but we could not set a time. Now, in the one that I set an appointment, it was someone who actually I'd worked with for years.
Wow.
And then because someone had free tickets to a movie to get their information, he ended up buying a house with them last year or 2 years ago.
That happens.
But he bought a house in Nicholasville, which doesn't
Yeah.
work for him. He doesn't like the community. He doesn't like working in Nicholasville, so he's ready to move. So he wants to sell his house and buy another in Lexington.
Right.
So we talked about it, and we talked about setting an appointment.
Mhm.
But then as an afterthought, he said, what if my credit went down? Oh, so well, you can
Oh.
buy. I mean, you can sell, but you might not be able to buy. And
Right.
then through more of the conversation, it comes out that he had oh shoot. He had problems paying his mortgage, so I forget what he had to do. He had to do a something.
A refinance.
No, he didn't do a refinance. They had to rework his loan. I forget what it's called, but I've heard it several times.
Recast?
Never been through it. I had a client that did it actually, and it worked out. But
Okay.
he had to like
You have to redo his.
place. Yes.
Yeah.
So the thing is, at this point in time, with his low credit score and with that situation, he's going to have to wait a year or two after. I can't remember what that situation, what you call it, but I know that you have to wait a year or two for that to resolve and to pay your mortgage on time for him to be able to actually move forward with purchasing. So you don't want someone to sell a house
Yeah.
if they're not going to be able to purchase something else to live in. if that's their goal.
That is a really good point. And actually, for a lot of times when you do have clients who are in a situation where they only purchased their home within the last year or two, sometimes, and I remember this came up a lot back in the 2007 market crash a lot.
Right.
Sometimes their loan has a condition that if they're purchasing it as a residential property, they cannot sell. They cannot get out of that mortgage within a couple of years.
Yeah.
Like,
You're right.
or there will be a steep penalty that they probably can't afford.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Don't own it for 2 years, you'll have to pay out the wazoo in taxes.
There you go.
Right.
That's right.
And then you could be upside down too, especially if they did a first-time home buyers, no money down.
Yes, it usually takes about 7 years or so, or at least it did back then when I did the math commonly. It usually takes about 7 years or so for people to be able to come out even on a property.
Right.
If they're not in it for that amount of time, now this has been weird the last couple of years because the market's just gone up and up and up. But now that we're back to what I would consider like a normal healthy market again, I'm assuming it'd probably be around the same amount of time, around 7 years for somebody to purchase a home and then get out of it in a reasonable fiscal way.
Right.
Years ago, at 287, we could probably get 375 for it today, at
Well,
least.
Well, and again, these are weird times.
Yes.
Yes.
If you didn't buy it in the last 2 years, that's fine.
Yes. So.
Did you say that again?
Oh, she was just going.
If you didn't buy it the last 2 years, what?
Oh, then she was saying that if you didn't buy in the last, 2-3 years in this market, then it might be a thing where like I'm saying, it would take you a longer period of time to
Right.
come out to break even, basically. But again, like I was saying before, these last few years, I would say really since 2017, have just been really odd because of the housing shortage that just continuously have more and more value.
Right.
My wife and I purchased our house in 2021, and it has already grown about 30% in value estimated since then. Possibly more. I mean, it's just been wild. The market that we've currently been in, and to a degree continue to be in, but again, I think that we're getting into a little bit of a healthier market where that is going to slow down a little bit, but it's whatever. That's not what we're here to talk about. Our B buyers and sellers are either unable, not ready, or not willing right now. They may be motivated and something needs to happen first. Our goal with B buyers and sellers is to follow up frequently and intensely. I think it's supposed to say intensely, using touch plans and MOFIRS, MOFIRS, none of this.
Make offer for immediate response.
Look at that, make offer for immediate response. Attractive offers that elicit responses. That's what we were just talking about with quantifying your buyers who may not be ready today. They might be ready within a year or within a few months. I personally look at within 6 months is an incredibly reasonable and healthy timeline. If you have to be done within 3 months, you have to go hard in the paint. Because there's still so much competition for homes that you're just not going to get a house if you dilly-dally and try to get the best possible deal for yourself. It may happen.
Actually, if you wait until like March of this year, you're gonna be up against 20 other buyers.
Well, so why is that? You just mentioned that waiting until March.
Because buyers have been waiting and waiting and waiting.
Why have they been waiting?
Because interest rates went up and everybody freaked out.
Well, that's
They
part
know
of
that
it.
it's high.
But this happens every year though, even when
Yeah.
there's not high interest rates. So what's the other part?
Buyers have been pent up because there's nobody selling. So
Nobody's selling. So this is an interesting question. See, who are the principal purchasers of homes? What is the most common group of people who buy homes? You're looking at,
First-time home buyers.
well, first-time home buyers, but families a lot of the time. You're
Oh,
looking,
okay.
yeah, you're looking at a lot of times a dual income household who maybe has one or two kids, all right, are often the people who are your buyers. And that's not every time. There's a lot of investors, there's a lot of, there's some single people, there's some retirees who are downsizing and that kind of thing, but a lot of time, those dual income households with kids are your principal home purchasers. And those people need a space to move into, but they also don't want to move during the school year. They don't want to move once you get Halloween, you have every month for 5 months, you have a new holiday. You have a new thing you have to spend money on. Plus, it's cold, and wet, and nobody wants to do that.
I always tell people that's a great time to buy.
It is a great time to buy if you can afford to move then.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to move their kid out of their school district during the school year. Nobody wants to drive across town or across county lines to take their kid to school because people just don't have time for that. You've got Halloween, Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Christmas, Chinese New Year. You got Valentine's Day, Easter, and people are doing things on those weekends. People are doing things during those holidays and they're spending so much money. But then what happens? College spring break, public school spring break. And during those times, all of a sudden, people have time. Kids aren't in school. You're not in school because you're in college and you've got to find a place to live because your lease is going to be up in 2 months. You got to find a place to live, and spring is when it happens. The semester ends.
People come out of hibernation.
Exactly. And so when you're a buyer in that situation, you've gone from suddenly having very little competition to now all of those families, all of those young professionals come out of the woodwork. And those are our B buyers today. Okay. Those are the ones who not quite ready to buy yet because it's just now February, but here in a few months they will be. And now is the time to begin prepping those people for that spring and summer market. Now is the time to start qualifying them for loans. Now is the time to start, going in there with your appraising eye and saying like, I really feel like you need to take this hot pink wall and paint it beige, or gray or whatever the end color is. It's certainly not hot pink or bright electric green. Now is the time to be going in and qualifying your buyers and sellers and making sure that they are ready for their coming market. C buyers and sellers have no immediate need to transact. These are the perfect candidates for long-term nurtures and the 36 touch. It's up to 36. It used to be, there was 32 when I started. But 36 touch plan that you developed in session 12. Those people, the C buyers, are the ones I talk about when I say there's some people I've been working with for like 6 years. The longest I've ever worked with somebody and then they bought a property was 4 years. I nurtured that poor woman. I was her therapist. I was somebody that she would call once every 2 months and say, hey, there's this property that I'm interested in looking at that's out in Clarksburg. Do you care to come out and see it? And I'm like, I'll tell you what, let me come out Sunday after my open house. We'll take a look at it. You find your free time, you plan in advance. She's a qualified buyer. She just doesn't have a need to buy. She wants to buy, but there's no pressing need. And she wants a really weird, obscure property. And it took her 4 years to find that property, but I stuck with her and it paid off in the long run. And I made a good friend. It was cool. Love her to death. She was weird. Any ahas from that? I'm sure somebody had one, right? Aha. No? All right, fine. Qualifying sellers and buyers. In the last section, we started with the win-win of qualification. Our potential clients win because we provide them with the right value at the right time. And we win because we got to focus our attention on helping clients who are ready to buy and sell. Based on what we covered in previous sessions about, yes. Did somebody say something? Somebody said something. All right, based on what we covered in previous sessions about segmenting your database, what might be some additional advantages of qualifying leads and contacts? Explain how qualifying our leads and contacts can help us better engage with follow-up.
I have something. I think that we don't talk about motivation enough.
Okay,
I think that motivation, knowing their true, and we've talked about this before this class, but knowing their true absolute motivation, like we want to downsize. Okay, what's important to you about downsize?
right.
Well, we want to be able to move to the beach eventually. Okay, what's important to you about moving to, like, if you dig 3 questions deep when they tell you what you think their motivation is, you'll get to their true motivation. And then when they fall off the rails in a couple months, they're like, oh, we just don't want to, okay. You told me in the beginning that you really wanted to move to the beach because you wanted to spend more time with your family. So if that's still the case, then I think we should keep doing what we're doing or whatever. But you can help remind them of that to continue the process or to get them re-engaged or whatever.
So that's actually something, that's a really interesting point. And you know, I'm glad you thought of it because it touches back on what I was just saying about the woman who I worked with for like 4 years.
Mhm.
She didn't need to buy, she
Wasn't motivated.
wanted to buy. She had an idea of what she wanted, but it was kind of an obscure thing. She wanted to have land, but she didn't want to have a big house on it, and she wanted it to be, you know, somewhere in Kentucky, but it had to be under a certain price. And of course, the last several years, the price has been wild. There's been a ton of competition, and she didn't want to really deal with that. So we were going out and finding all these obscure properties. I remember one of them was actually burned down. You know, and we walked through the smoking ruins. They weren't smoking, but like we walked through the charred ruins of this house that had burned down. Being like, well, so obviously you have to rebuild the house, but what do you think of the location and the land? You know, and that was something, the idea of building something new really worked for her, and the idea of taking an old house that was in poor condition and renovating it and making it her own really appealed to her, which is ultimately what wound up happening. We found a little property in Clark County, looked over a river, and it was in absolute trash condition. And she has spent the last 2 years working on it, and it is gorgeous now. It just took a long time. And to speak to their motivations, a lot of times when I'm with clients and, you know, we have them set up on that portal, right? A lot of times when you set a client up on a client portal, does everybody know what a client portal is? I realize I'm talking to people who might not know what a client portal is.
Mohammed should know. Mohammed, do you know how to set people up on a client portal?
Is Muhammad still here?
What was that again?
Do you know how to set people up on a client portal?
On the MLS?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Great.
Okay, good. So a lot of times when we have clients set up on these client portals, we wind up never changing those portals.
Yeah.
You know, it kind of becomes a set it and forget it, which even happens to me a lot of the time. But what I try to remind people of while I'm out there working with them is saying like, so when we very first got started, you said that you had to have a 3-bedroom home or a 4-bedroom home. But I've noticed that you keep sending me a lot of properties from Zillow that aren't within your portal. And I'm just wondering if there's something about those properties that's really appealing to you that isn't that we didn't cover before. Because obviously what I'm sending you isn't getting the job done, because that's not what we're going to see. We're going to see these other properties that you're finding on your own that don't do what you want them to do, or what you told me that you wanted them to do. So let's readdress what you want. Let's readdress what you need. And then we can go in and we can provide that service. There should never be a reason outside of their just caveman brain telling them to click the next button for a client to go to Zillow or Julia. If you've really talked to them and you've really sat down and figured out what their needs are and what their wants are, your portal should be able to handle that. You should be able to construct that portal in such a way that the only properties that they see are from that, because that is exactly what they want. I have a client who's moving here from Nevada right now, and he texts me every couple of days to say, wow, this property that you just sent is amazing. I really wish I was moving there today. 2 weeks ago, I went out and previewed a house on FaceTime with him because he was like, this one is so perfect that I would be willing to take your word on it if it was good. So I went and I FaceTimed him, walked through the property.
Yep, I've done that too.
And while we wound up not making an offer that day, that's the sort of response that you want to get from the properties that you're sending. Now, that's not something that happens most of the time. You know, like you're not going to have people call you up and be like, hey, go preview this right now. But the last few years, you kind of had to go right now. Now.
Yeah,
You know,
I lost out some clients who've been looking forever because they don't really want to move.
yeah,
We were gonna go see a house and I said, are you sure you wanna wait till Friday? Yep, we don't have time during the week. Okay, under contract by Wednesday.
Yep.
Sorry.
if the property's worth anything,
Yep.
we are still in.
Price correctly, it's out of here.
We are still in a low enough inventory market that the competition is still there. So particularly if you have picky clients, clients who don't want to do any work, which is most of us, we don't want to do any work when we move into the house.
Yeah.
You know, you gotta pre-prepare your clients and say, this is what the market is today. You know, this changes. I make the joke all the time that, you know, for the first 5 years of my career, I basically guaranteed somebody I could get them $15,000 off the asking price.
Yeah.
Like I just guaranteed it. Like, there's no way I'm not
Especially
gonna
when
get
you
you.
started.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That kind of stopped around 2012. And then I got used to getting about $5,000 off. And then by about 2015, I got used to about $2,000 or $3,000 off. And then by 2017, sometimes we'd have to pay a little more than asking. And after 2017, it was like, do you have 35,000 extra dollars? Because if you don't, we're not getting this house. And that stayed that way for 5 years. And then in 2022, it started to come down and ease off a little bit, but the houses that people want, there's still very genuine competition for. I sold a house this past year that was $35,000 that we're asking with the interest rates being what they are. I've sold a lot of houses that people are offering at asking price or more over the last couple of years. Even with the interest rates being what they are, because people recognize a good deal when they see it. Especially that pool of buyers that you have, those ABC buyers, when they've been in the market as a B buyer for several months, they're educated to the market. They know what is good. They probably missed out on 1 or 2 houses that they really wanted. And now they understand when they see what they want, they will get it and they won't dilly-dally. And you got to prepare them for that. It really is cool when you get to say, I told you so, without ever saying I told you so.
Yeah,
You
don't.
never
actually
say I told you so,
Don't say.
but you can have that look in your eye. That's okay. Cool. In the last section, we talked about the win-win of qualification. Our potential clients win because we provide them with the right value at the right time, and we win because we get to focus our attention on helping clients who are ready to buy or sell. Based on what we've covered in previous sessions about segmenting your database, what might be some additional advantages to qualifying leads and contacts? I feel like we covered that. Let's see. We use the same buyer qualification process for all buyers and the same seller qualification process for all sellers to make sure that we are always in compliance with fair housing regulations. Fair housing regulations is super important. The only reason I ever discriminate against anybody is if they don't have the ability. Like,
Well, it's not discrimination. They just don't have the ability. I'm not.
correct.
Yeah.
Exactly. If they can't afford it, or if it's not theirs to sell,
Yep.
that's the only
Yep.
times that I discriminate against anybody.
Also, if you're not sending that fair housing form in dot loop,
Yes,
you better start, because it says in the contract that you sent it to them.
which actually touches back to the point I was gonna make earlier, and I got asked a question and I forgot about it. Thank you for saying that. All of the forms that we need are available in Dotloop, including the fair housing brochure, lead-based paint for houses that were built before 1978, and importantly, exclusive right to sell, which is where the seller hires you and the buyer representation agreement where the buyer hires you.
Yep.
You also need to get used to doing your agency consent, and you need to get used to doing your agency relationships.
Yep.
Okay,
Well, that needs to be the very first.
yes,
We have talked about this quite a bit.
very good. Well, the only reason I bring it up is because I know that we talk about it quite a bit, but I also know that I hear stories all the time, especially when I'm at LBAR. Well, it's no longer LBAR, BAR, whatever we're calling ourselves now, where we do those big classes, somebody invariably says, well, I've never given that to my client. Why do I need that? And I'm like, because you're stupid, that's why.
You're the reason that we're getting.
You're the reason that we have problems. Do your jobs. One thing that the association has been doing over the last couple of years, whether you agree with it or not, I don't, but it's okay, is that it's doing a much better job of holding everybody's hand and saying, look, these are the basics, just do it basically. I personally believe that we need to hold ourselves to a higher standard, but that doesn't mean that the association can't hold itself to a higher standard as well, which is what it's trying to do.
Mhm.
All right, whether you agree with the methodology or not. Now, hold yourselves to a high standard, get those forms signed. It's incredibly important.
And use a checklist when you're qualifying people so you don't forget to ask them questions. If
Absolutely.
you don't have one, find one. They're readily available everywhere.
In fact, those are also undone. Use a buyer lead sheet to guide you through the qualification, and a sample is included in your participant guide. Oh, wait, that's, what did I do? I missed that.
Sometimes you have to click on the screen itself.
Uh-oh,
It's okay.
there
There
we
we
go.
go.
Cool,
Oh, look, we're gonna talk about it. There you go.
there we go. Role model the buyer consultation with the volunteer. Cheyenne,
Yes.
thank you. Hi, Cheyenne. I'm excited to help you find your new home. I'd like to start with some questions to make sure I can give you a 5-star customer experience. Let's start with some basics. What's the best email and phone number to reach you? That's a very important question. You have to be able to get in touch with people.
Mhm.
What is this?
Cheyenne McBride 2006 @gmail.com.
Good job. Thank you for those. And what are the best times to be able to reach you?
Not at dinner time.
Not at dinner time or after 8 or before?
And I want to answer collaborate.
There you go.
People always call me at dinner time. My mom calls me, I'm making dinner. I'm with my kids. Stop calling me at dinner time.
People don't know when you eat dinner.
Don't call. I eat dinner. My mom knows. My mom.
Well, your mom, that's
Between
it.
like 5 and 6:30, don't call me. How about that?
That's
I
reasonable.
won't answer.
Make sure you advertise that because nobody else knows.
Yeah.
Has another agent taken you out or shown you any properties? Now, this is a really important question.
And you better ask it 25 ways because people lie.
Yes. Remember what I was talking about when I said that, your buyers will just go out and go to open houses and things of that nature?
Uh-huh.
There's a thing called procurement, all right? If your buyer, who you've been working with for several months, years, minutes, doesn't matter, goes out to an open house, calls an agent because they don't want to bother you, that agent has now procured that listing. It's really hard to argue procurement in your own favor. If you have an exclusive buyer representation agreement, that can help you. But that's part of that conversation and checking in with your clients every couple of days. Because again, even if you have the form, it's just a piece of paper they had to sign. They don't think about that form. You think about that form. You think about your responsibilities and obligations to your clients. They don't know you. Sometimes.
I'm
they-
actually really, oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Oh, hi, Sydney. How are you doing?
Hi, yeah, sorry, I was running a little late this morning.
You're perfectly fine.
Thank you. So I actually had something just like that. I was doing an open house in Versailles and this gentleman came in and he was very eager. He was not necessarily interested in that property, but he was interested in things like it. So I was going through asking questions, and he said, yes, he had worked with an agent before, but he hadn't heard from them in a while. And I was like, okay, we're teetering on. You need to give me a little bit more information, because your definition of
Yes.
you haven't heard from him and my definition are probably going to be a little different.
Right.
So I poked and prodded a little bit, and he ended up telling me the agent's name. And they're not with the Keller Williams office, but I knew who they were through a
Right.
previous interaction. And I was like, oh my gosh, I know them. And his tune changed immediately, because it was clear on his face. He realized, oh, I can't BS her anymore because she can call up my agent. And I
Right.
mean, I don't feel like he was trying to be malicious or sneaky. Honestly, I feel like it was more being a little petty towards this other agent. But I did end up, um, he did tell me that there had been paperwork signs, and I ended up calling the agent after the open house was done, saying, hey, I saw your client. He was talking about this and talking about that. Just wanted to let you know he came to this open house. And she was incredibly thankful. And it just try to look out for your other agents too. Don't be shady, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Have
Yes.
integrity.
That's
doing
right.
the
Integrity,
thing. Good
do the
job.
right thing. And I absolutely agree with what you did. You did the correct thing, and I'm proud of you. Good job, Sydney.
Thank you.
So
I'd like to add to that if I could. I
yeah.
think that
Oh,
this is Crystal Gail Smith.
how you doing, girl?
It's good to see you. You're doing
Absolutely.
a great job. I don't think I've ever sat through any of your classes, but pretty amazing. So good stuff.
Well, I had a good
You really did. So here's my thought, and this is part of my buyer consultation. We'll get into this Tuesday when I teach Ignite. But typically, a part of our job is just coaching. It's education, therapist, and coaching and research. That's what we do.
Yes.
And part of being a good coach is always coaching the team. You're guiding them. You think of them as a flowing river. You're creating boundaries at all times because things are changing and motivations, timelines, whatever it may be. But in coaching them, if we're talking about just open houses, I hand them a stack of my cards before they leave the buyer consultation. And I say, look, I recognize that there's times that our schedules will not align, and you may want to go to an open house. I'd love for you to go to that open house. I'd like you to do me a favor. I want you to hand them my card. Let them know we're going to be working together. In preparation for that, I go ahead and schedule in showing time during the open house, the showing with my buyer's name. Then I text the agent or call them if the relationship is there and let them know Jane Doe is going to be popping by tomorrow. I'm working with them. In fact, they're going to probably give you my card.
Crystal, that is a really good way to use your business cards.
I like that.
I commonly mock business cards. I have the Mitch Hedberg point of view on business cards, where I don't know if you're familiar with the comedian Mitch Hedberg. He passed away several years ago, but he was really known for his one-liners and little quips. And he said, I really hate flyers because it's like somebody's coming up to me and saying, hey, will you throw this away for me? And so I kind of nurtured that thought process into my opinion on business cards, but I actually really like what you're doing with that, to utilize that as a method for communication and networking through other people, I think is really smart. And I might just start doing that myself. I might steal that from you. That's my own personal aha.
Experience is a hard teacher, and I can tell you, having been in procuring cause myself,
Yeah.
it will teach you quickly how to create an ironclad alibi for who is aligned with who.
There you go. See, that's smart. Crystal's good.
Yes, she is. She knows what she's talking about. I would add to that consultation question, the pre-qual questions.
Yeah.
Besides, has an agent taking you out and showing you properties, I would ask specifically, maybe 2 or 3 times, is there an agent you're going to work with? If I show you properties, are you working with me, or do you have a cousin that you're gonna go ask the right to offer, because I have been burned that way. It took family out, they were pre-approved. I said, are you working with anybody? They said, no. I showed them 4 houses, they were all about $600,000-$700,000. And then the next day, they're like, well, we have, blah, 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 we're gonna have them right off. I was like,
So a lot of times when it comes to something like that, what I will do,
because I didn't have the buyer rep agreement signed either. That was,
there is that, but I think a lot of times we as agents, when we're put in that situation, we know and understand what's going on, because again, remember that your clients have no concept of what agency is. That is a real estate knowledge thing
Yep.
that we interact with, and sometimes we impose that onto our clients.
Yep.
But the reality is that we impose it onto one another. And so when I've been in situations like that before, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll call the agent and I'll say, hey, look, here's the deal. I just went out and showed these people 14 listings over the course of a month. And I understand that you have a prior relationship with them, but they never mentioned you. I asked, I would like to get a referral on this, at the very least. I will give you the lion's share, but at the very least, give me something here, because I did a lot of work. And I think for the most part, we as agents understand the work that we put in, and most people will be agreeable to something like that.
Yeah.
And you should be paid for the work you're doing, especially in a situation where somebody just gets to kind of swoop in at the last second. I never want to stop a client from working with who they want to work with. All right. I'm always about building bridges.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just have to sometimes you just got to take Nick,
Yeah.
like it just works out that way sometimes. But again, when you talk about communication, that can come back, and we all know or are learning
yes,
how to do that.
Yeah.
And so,
haven't done that again.
so just be prepared and be okay with talking to your fellow agents. Sometimes you'll get somebody who's just a rat to work with,
Yeah.
but that's very uncommon. Most people who are successful in this business understand what's going on, okay? And they're willing
Those sound like the type of clients that just think we're all salaried, honestly.
well, and therein is just part of the ultimate problem, where they don't know how we get paid and they don't know what we do. They just know that we sell houses. They have no idea how it works.
And that's where the
And-
education piece comes in. It's our job to have that appointment with them, the
Yes.
buyer consult, explain it all to them.
And so
And I
when
didn't
you're
do that.
And
so-
when you're doing the buyer representation agreement, a lot of times clients will, whether it's the buyer or the seller. A lot of times when we're sitting down and we're talking to these new clients, we won't go over the actual forms. We'll just say, hey, you got to sign this. You have to be okay. You have to sit down and learn those forms and be able to communicate what's actually on each of them.
Yeah, and if you need help with that, go back and watch the videos that Michael did the 2 days before Ignite actually started, because he went through every form and explained everything that you need to explain to your clients.
Yes. And if for some reason you don't have access to those videos, maybe your internet's not working that day, pick up a phone and call me. Pick up a phone and call another agent that you know and trust. We're here at Keller Williams. We're about helping one another out. Okay. We are building this community here.
Hey, Andrew.
Yes.
So the comment was made that the clients don't understand agency, and surely they don't. But that's one of the reasons why, and we think it's kind of crazy that when we have our first conversation with someone to
Yes.
bring out that agency, they said to put it in your trunk of your car and have it available. And I don't think any of us really truly do that. But when
Some
you
people
get
say
to the
they do.
point where, yeah, okay. Well, but when you get to the point where you feel like you're putting in work, you need to make sure that they understand that. And Crystal Gale is totally right. I always give them my card. If we're talking about going to an open house, make sure they get my card and that they know that you're working with another realtor. And we'll be able to talk about the ups and downs, or the ins and outs, the goods and the bads about that property. So,
That's
yeah, that's
the consumer guide to agency relationships that you technically should be handing out at the same time that you hand out your buyer representation agreement.
Yes.
I am not one to prescribe to the idea that you should have them in your trunk and that you should just immediately hand them out to every single person.
Right.
You know, but when I'm actually working with somebody like you were just saying, it is important to just go ahead and qualify those things as you're going along and to explain agency to people anecdotally in the moment. You know, so you can be like, so we're going to see this house today. It's actually listed with another agency, and I'm going to check and make sure that they're willing to pay commission on that. You know, because if not, that could affect you in what you're able to purchase. Because remember, we signed this agreement that said that I'm going to get X amount of dollars. And if I don't get X amount of dollars from them, then that falls onto you to pay up the remainder. You know, so that snaps people's attention real quick, you know, and says, oh, there's more to this. I forgot that this was, you know, your job. You know, that you don't just love walking into houses, although I do. You know, that is again part of the commitment. That's part of the communication and part of the excuse me, just part of the trust that you're building with clients along the way. You don't want to ever button hook a client with any sort of unexpected conditions as to your own agency.
Right. And be real upfront.
Yes, be very upfront. So, you know, when you're talking to your clients about whether you're doing a listing, you talk to them about how much you charge. And I'm not going to say any particular percentage because you can charge whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
But with the new court cases that have been out recently, you know, there's a lot of questions right now that you might just be fielding from clients in regards to, you know, so how does your pay work? How do you get paid? What do I owe you for doing this? And it's not as necessarily reliable as it might have been 6 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're here at a very new and interesting time to get started in real estate or to be learning how to have that conversation with your clients.
I'd like to add to that, Andrew. It's Crystal again. It's important to note the correct order for which we present documents when we're talking specifically about buyers here. Because if you'll note, our purchase contract does make reference to licensees being compensated. If you'll note, the buyer rep talks about the various ways that we can be compensated through for sale by owners, through cooperation with the MLS, and through the buyer themselves. If we find a property and no one else is pretty much willing to pony up, we're going to come looking for that money. So it's important to disclose that. But if you go back to what Denise said and you look at page 2 of the consumer guide, well, it used to be called consumer guide. What do we call it now, guys? Guide to agency?
Yeah, the guide to agency.
If you look at page 2 of it, right above fair housing, if I recall correctly, after you between teams and fair housing, it talks about compensation. So when you're whipping that out of your trunk, if that's going to be the manner in which you conduct yourself, that is a good time to discuss that we get paid. So you're setting expectation from the beginning. Yeah, I like to show houses, but I'm not a not-for-profit. We're in this to make money. It's my bread and butter. It's how I feed my family.
That's right. That's right. And, you know, there are forms classes that we're going to go over if we haven't already gone over them here in Ignite. But do remember that that's a very important part of your agency. It's a very important part of your business, and you have to get comfortable with those forms. You have to gain a mastery over those forms very quickly because there are very subtle nuances that can change the nature of your job and how you get paid and who pays you. Okay, so get comfortable with that. I think we're going to move on to not compensation for a minute.
I have to leave in a couple minutes.
Absolutely.
But before I leave, Crystal is teaching tomorrow and she's teaching Tuesday, and we will likely go until noon because she is going to go through the entire listing presentation
That's awesome.
and the entire buyer presentation. So if you're planning to attend, and I'll have Jeffrey send out a message too. We won't be done at 11. We'll probably be done closer to 12.
Important to know. And those are really good classes too.
Yeah.
I cannot stress enough how important it is for you to learn your forms.
Yeah.
So at this point, you've uncovered your A, B, and C buyers. And when you uncover a buyer who is not able, ready, or willing to buy right now, that indicates that they're a future transaction you need to stay in the relationship with, how do you use your touch plans to nurture the relationship? We're gonna learn more about working with A buyers in session 14, Win the Buyer. We qualify seller leads with pre-listing questionnaires that helps us build relationships with the 6 connecting questions and classify our potential sellers as A, B, or C. Our pre-listing questionnaire will also help us create a pre-listing packet that wins the listing agreement by focusing on the seller's motivations. If you were here for the beginning of the class, you might remember that I mentioned that when I first got started, I did a lot of drive around, ooh, there's a for sale by owner, get that information, look it up on the Fayette PBA, write them a letter, put together a little listing packet, and send it off and just say, I'm advertising myself to you. This is what I'm capable of, and I hope you like it. And most of the time they don't want to do anything, but sometimes they do. I wound up getting 2 listings doing that, and it wasn't that much work because I spent one night putting together the entire packet. I would change minor details for each individual property. I would personalize it to that property and to that seller. And then I would just drive back the next day, stick it in their door with a little ribbon on it. I got 2 sales out of that in 2 years. That's enough to quantify how much time I spent on it. So do these things, they matter. Qualifying sellers, there we go. So the pre-listing questionnaire. Wants me to do the role modeling stuff again, but I'm just gonna kind of slide through the actual form itself.
Yeah.
Of course, no problem, Cheyenne.
Thank you so much.
Anybody is welcome to drop out as they need to. Hopefully you all stay. We don't have that much more to go through. But if you need to go, feel free to. Otherwise, I'm gonna continue on for a minute. So when you're doing this questionnaire here, you don't have to use an actual piece of paper. Understand? Like, you can just sort of learn these questions to ask and just drop them into casual conversation. But if you're more comfortable using a form, like if you want to sit there, especially the first few times that you're getting used to this conversation and just sort of check the list as you go, you can ask these questions and it will help you to identify just important little bits and pieces about your clients that come together to form a full picture. How'd you hear about me? Where are you moving? What's your motivations? How soon do you have to be there? If we sell your home in the next 30 days, is that a problem? Well, because recently that's been a real thing. Like a lot of times, what we've had over the last couple of years is that if you have a client who is a seller, they still need to find a place to go. So you know full well that you can put their house on the market, and then they have to find something. So what you wind up doing is you work into the offer to purchase. You say, okay, well, buyer, we need to have some extra time after the contract to be able to find a home, which may or may not happen within 30 days. So we're going to try our best, but just work with us and then we'll have a closing afterwards. So you got sort of a mobile closing date, if that makes any sense. And you work with the buyer up front to work with your seller and make that work out. What happens if your home doesn't sell? Well, I have a client who just moved to Indianapolis and they wanted to make sure that they closed by February. Well, as it turned out, we're not closing until the first couple of weeks of February. And so they have to make a double mortgage payment on the first of the month today. And they'll get reimbursed for that, but they're pretty short on cash for the month. Like, they just don't have any extra money because they're doing double mortgage this month. So that's a legitimate problem for a lot of people. They are very fortunate to be in a situation where they can kind of afford that right now. And by kind of afford that, I mean they can't afford it, but it'll be fine like in a week when we close. As long as we close, we don't close, that's a big problem. How much did you want to list your home for? I told that same client, I think we should list your house for $200,000. They said, well, we can't afford to list it for less than 2,000 or 200,010 or $210,000. I can math. $210,000. Well, so I did what I could, and fortunately, we sold it for $210,000. So that worked out. How much do you owe on the property? That plays into how much they need. They have to pay off a mortgage that they already have, an existing mortgage on the property. Now, not everybody has a pre-existing mortgage, but some people might have other things they have to pay for to sell their property. Let's pretend that somebody's got an illness, like they've got cancer or something like that, and they have a pretty hefty hospital bill. Like sometimes that can be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And if you don't pay the bill, they're going to put a mortgage on your home. Well, fortunately, in this particular scenario that I'm concocting off the top of my head, this particular seller has a investment property that they purchased 20 years ago, and they've already paid it off. And so now they're just going to sell that property, and that's going to prevent their medical bill from putting a lien on their primary residence. So, you know, it's a nice thing to have. There's Maria. I'll be sending you a packet of information. You take a few minutes to review it before you meet. That's just you sending all the necessary documentation to your clientele and making sure that they have things like the agency disclosure form, the consumer guide to agency relationships, and the buyer representation or the listing exclusive right to sell. They're also going to need to know things like a seller's disclosure in this case, seller's disclosure of property condition. You got to make sure that you have these things out to them and explain to them how to utilize those forms before they put the house on the market. You don't want to be sitting there and saying, okay, well, we're going to put your house on the market tomorrow. Oh, and by the way, I know it's 8 o'clock at night, but I need you to fill out this seller's disclosure of property condition, or I'm not going to be able to put your house on the market. You know, now they're sitting there scrambling at the last minute to fill a form out. Get it to them a week in advance. You know, give them time. Talk about it with them. You know, look, this is something that you have to have. This is the results of what this can do. This is what it means over the course of the transaction. Have those conversations. Will all the decision makers be there when we meet? Well, not if the ex-husband's back in Kansas. You know, like sometimes people don't know, but typically speaking, in a family, you're going to have the husband and wife. If you're talking about an investor, you need to have every investor within the investment company. If it's an LLC, for example, you might need to have multiple signatures from 3 or 4 folks. You got to know all these things before you put it on the market, because what you don't want to have is you don't want to get all the way to the point that you've started putting signatures on paper for a contract, God forbid, and you wind up having some random business partner or random husband or ex of some situation come out of the woodwork and be like, well, I don't want to sell for that. Estate sales, this happens a lot. You need to make sure that you have the estate in order, and that all parties are agreeable, and that there is preferably one decision maker, an executor or executrix beforehand. You don't want it to be a situation where all siblings have to make a decision. I had a situation last year where I had one sibling in an estate sale who loved me to death. And then we had another one who didn't know me from John and didn't want to work with me because that would make her sister happy. And so I had this really great listing slipped through my fingers because I didn't know all the decision makers. That just happens sometimes. And they wound up working with another realtor, and I hope it worked out for that realtor. I just know that that was a very contentious relationship. We've got to deal with that sometimes. I usually tell people at the bottom here, you see it says, just so you know, our meeting will take between this many minutes. I usually tell people that depending on the level of work that I'm doing for them that night, I can typically write a contract in about 20 to 45 minutes. I can do all of the paperwork with them in the room. Like if we could start from point alpha and go all the way to point omega, then I can usually do that within about 2 hours. Go over every single form, line by line, explain it to them. And if there's a lot of people in the room and we're having a lot of questions, then, you know, I tell them it could take upwards of 3 hours. But typically I can get it done within 2. How'd you hear about me? Where are you moving to? I feel like this is the same. Yeah, it's just the same thing. All right, so that's asking us for role play. Any aha moments, any questions from that last little bit there? You can come in.
Well, that's for you. I was just telling you that's for you.
Oh, thank you.
I gotta go.
Thanks, Mom. That's Maria I was talking about earlier. She's pretty great. She just brought me some food. I don't know what it is. Let's see. Communicate. At this point, you have uncovered your A, B, and C sellers. When you uncover a seller who is not able, ready, or willing to buy right now, that indicates that they're a future transaction and you need to stay in touch with them. This is when you use your touch plans to nurture that relationship. For example, you could send B and C potential sellers market updates that keep them informed to the equity that could leverage or purchase a new home or investment property. We'll learn more about working with A sellers in session 15 when the seller. Your call to action for this session is to question and categorize your A, B, and C buyers and sellers in your database and set them on touch plans to stay on top of mind. So touching back real quick on just staying in touch with clients and putting them onto like a portal to make sure that they understand that market. Even with a seller, it's a good idea sometimes to put them onto a portal. You're going to want to, at the bare minimum, do a CMA with them before you wind up listing their home, and that is at the bare minimum. Okay. Keeping people up to date with market trends is super important. They need to understand days on market. They need to understand list price versus sales price, the percentages that come into play. They need to understand price versus condition and how that affects the actual final number of what they're going to take home. If you put them on a portal, for example, like your sellers, okay? If you put your sellers on a portal and you're just showing them new listings that are coming up, they're going to see, oh man, look at this beautiful home. It's got all these new granite countertops in it. My home doesn't have granite countertops. It's got Formica countertops. Okay, well, that's a few $1,000s difference. You know, like that's going to cost somebody to install that. That's a big deal. So being able to put them in a place to be able to see and understand what the market is important. And those portals and those phone calls and just going out and previewing properties with them, whether they're a buyer or a seller, you know, you can go look at other houses on the market as a seller to get an idea in person of what your competition is. Some neighborhoods have a ton of competition. Now, it's been the case over the last few years that they're just competition hasn't mattered. Like whatever's on the market, you're going to sell it. But right now, I'm going to touch back on that most recent sale that I was telling you about with people who moved to Indianapolis. In the neighborhood that they're selling in, there just so happened to be 2 homes that sold within the last 6 months, one of whom closed in the last month, right before we were putting our house on the market. 6 months is a good time capsule, right? And those 2 homes closed for $40,000 less on average than the other homes. Why did those do that? Well, we called up the agents, came to find out that one of them was an estate sale and the other one was a foreclosure. And both of them were in pretty bad condition. So fortunately, we were able to adjust for that. We were able to say, well, okay, so based on the condition and based on the types of sales that these were being as is, being distressed situations, we're now able to compensate and say like, okay, so really the value would have been there if they were in good condition, because price versus condition, qualifying those sales so that you know when you talk to your sellers, this is what we can reasonably expect, because that comes back to how much money do you have to get out of this? how quickly do you think you're gonna sell? If I can buy a comparable property up the street, if there's a lot of distressed properties in the area, and I can just wait a couple months and all I gotta do is put some, carpet and paint in there. I don't wanna pay $40,000 for that. I'll just wait for another one of these distressed properties to come up. But if all of the surrounding properties are ones that are brand spanking new, and mine isn't brand spanking new, well, okay, well, that's gonna factor in as well. Like now I might not get as much as I wanted to. And quantifying that and verbalizing that with the seller, having that communication and that education along the way. There's just so many moving parts. All of this stuff that you're learning now just slides in and slides out at literally any given time. Do not hesitate to call your office veterans like myself, Maria, Denise, Mike Prather. Call these people up and say, hey, look, I have a question. How do I do X, Y, and Z? Mohammed, you did a really great job earlier of asking me how to quantify for a toilet. Like, how do I adjust for whether or not their house has a bathroom? Well, here's how I did it, and hopefully it works for you too. Any little questions like that you come up with, it doesn't matter how silly or stupid it is. Just feel free to ask the question. I would rather you know the answer, and I would rather you get it right than to have problems because you just made something up. Does that make sense? Anybody? So each day, training gets better with feedback. Where's that slide? Here we go. So each day and night, you grow in how you think, feel, act, and implement what you've learned. From learning and ahas, you move forward, achievement of your big life. You move toward achievement of your big life. And that's what we're here for, right? To achieve our big goals. I want you to write in your participant guide how you've grown in each of the areas. Talking about how your thinking has changed, what ideas or mindsets have you had that are new, what do you feel differently about, and what was meaningful to you today? How will your behaviors be different going forward, and what actions will you take, and what tools, models, or systems will you use, and how will those tools, models, and systems make you accountable? Now, you might be like me and think it's goofy to sit and write stuff down like that. But I will actually say that sometimes just putting pen to paper, there is true value there. Even when you're in negotiation for contracts, a lot of times people will say like, we'll just offer them X amount of money and see if they take it. And it's really easy to say no to a statement. It's very hard to say no when it's sitting on pen and paper in front of you. Somebody's actually offering you that much money. The same thing is true with these ideas and with these ahas to achievement. All right. When you quantify them, when you make them real on paper, it helps you to make them real out in the world, to have your bigger life that is actually true. Take the time to do that. So for the next 2 hours, good God, no, we're not doing this for another 2 hours. Work together on our success system, which consists of, don't forget to do your 20 minutes of role play conversation with your partner. For 10 minutes preparing, I want you to prepare your call list for the day. Don't forget to do real role play and 30 minutes of updating your database. That's the important one. Don't forget to update your database. If you have any questions regarding questions, role play, anything like that, I am absolutely here to sit and go through that with you. You can get me on your own time. You can get me on my own time. By all means, take the time to sit and do those things. I'm not going to do them right now. These activities are a daily habit of success. Practice them every day, use Ignite, and it will continue this rhythm for the rest of your career. Use the pages in your participant guide, let all the work together to achieve these and support one another. Daily success system. Make sure you have your conversations, contacts, handwritten notes. Make sure that you have your do not call list. Pay attention to that. I engage every conversation in the spirit of contribution, and people are happy to be in a relationship with me. Remember, I was telling you about how we do our best to not just have clients, but to actually make lifetime relationships. I want to become friends and professionally minded within people. I want people to think of real estate and think of Andrew Ganas. I want people to think of Muhammad. I want people to think of Denise when they think of real estate. I want you to be first and foremost within their mind, okay? Because that is how you get those referrals. Remember when we were looking at the percentages of how people get business? Referrals, referrals, referrals. It's the #1 way, okay? Most of my business these days is driven purely just by people knowing that I've done real estate for 10+ years. I mean, I've been in real estate in some capacity 30 years. I'm 41 now, so 38 years. It's a long time. Sorry, I can math. 28 years. See, role model your role play, prepare your conversation list. I think we're done, guys. Celebrate your success. Anybody have any successes this past week that they want to celebrate? Any breakthroughs? Are you still there?
Yes, like I told you, last night I had to read.
Speak up, Denise. You're coming through kind of choppy. Denise?
Hold on for just a minute.
Well, it's still choppy, Denise. I'm sorry. I don't know what's going on, but Muhammad, Sydney, do you have anything to
Is that
add?
better?
Yes, that was better, Denise. Yes, that was much better.
Can you hear me
No,
now?
nothing to add. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, thank you for coming. Again, if you all have any questions, feel free to drop a line on me. You can reach me. I'm in the KW app. Don't forget that you have that. It's a actually decent little tool that we have now that just recently came out. Denise, your microphone started coming well there. Did you have something you wanted to add?
Well, you were saying any successes, and we had an assignment, I think I don't know if it's make 3 appointments, but actually I had 4 conversations, had 1 appointment and making 2. Also, I wasn't even thinking about my conversation around real estate with someone who is actually about to take their real estate license. I gave them a piece of paper. Well, it's actually a little packet about what real estate school does not teach you. So I'm talking to him about coming to Keller Williams. So that was my 5th conversation. So I'm actually getting back into the swing of things. Andrew, you don't know that I kind of went in a lull for a few different reasons. And so I'm actually getting back on the horse and trying to get back in the swing of things. So and I was thinking before, how do I get back into the swing? But I came to my first Ignite class, and I've always loved Ignite. I take it every chance I get. And so it's easy. It's easy. You just got to flex that muscle memory because it's there. So if you've been out for a while, you've had a lull for a month or a year, it's not that hard.
Well, and I think that's important too, because there are ebbs and flows to everybody's career, right?
Right.
It's an extremely rare agent who can maintain that intensity for a very long period of time.
I talked to Linda Wiley, and Linda Wiley said that over her career, every year she thinks about getting out of real estate. I don't know how long she's been, and you probably know that better than me because isn't she one of our owners as well?
She is, yes.
Yeah, so she's been in real estate forever.
Linda Wiley's great.
Yeah, and that she says that thought comes across her mind. So, if it comes across hers, it probably will come across all of ours. So just keep forging ahead.
And Denise, that's something that like you, me, and Michael, we don't think about ourselves in this way, but we are the old guard now. Like it's it's a rare agent who gets past 5 years.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a rare agent who gets past 5 years in the business, and it's an extremely like just seriously, to you new people, it's extremely rare to have a longevity career that you can do this for, 20, 30 years. It's very intense, and it takes a lot out of you every single day. And I'm not trying to tell that to you to dissuade you. I'm trying to tell you that you need to have your expectations set correctly, and you need to understand what it takes to actually succeed, because it doesn't just come to you. You have to work it all the time. Like Denise is saying, she got out of it for a little while. Did you just have leads coming in every day while you were gone, Denise?
Did I have leads coming every day? No.
Yeah,
No.
exactly.
It was just,
So
they kind of dried up, but then, people know if you are passionate about what you do, you've had good relationship with people in the past. I didn't have them coming every day, but every now and then somebody would hit me, hey, I'm planning on moving back to Kentucky in February. And then her niece hit me at funeral the other day and said, I want to get with you probably at the end of the year. And I said, well, let's not wait till the end of the year. Let's get you started right now so we get you on track. So at the end of the year, you can meet your goal.
and that's a
So,
perfect example of what we're talking about today. That young lady, that niece, she wants to get something going, and you're setting her expectations appropriately for her timeline. You're getting her started now so that she will be educated and ready to go by the end of it. These are all important daily conversations that we have, and you have to have them regularly at the very least in order to maintain your success. Like I said, I'll talk to anybody at all, and I'll talk to them about real estate at any given time. I will talk, I use this example all the time. I used it earlier today. I'm going to use it again. I know the grocery cart guy who pushes the carts in. I know him by name. I've had a relationship with him for years, because one day he might recommend me to somebody. One day he might buy a house himself. Every single person that I come into contact with knows what I'm about. And that's what it needs to be for you too. Sydney, Mohammed, you got anything to add or any questions?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
All right.
No, I'm good. Sorry, it took me a second to get to my mic.
You're perfectly fine. No, that's all very reasonable. Okay, well, guys, I think we are done for today. So,
Andrew, I do have a question. I don't know if anybody can answer it for me, but this isn't dealing with my business. I have a need. I need to understand triple net leasing, and then triple net leasing. And then who do we have in the office now? I've called a couple of people, but I haven't received a call back or been able to connect. Is Steve still with us?
Steve Barno?
Stevens. No, Stevens. On the commercial side.
Oh, I don't know. Michael, is he still with us? Yes, Michael says he's with us. So that would be
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Because I need to understand some pricing in Georgetown. So
Okay.
do y'all have any idea of somebody who can help me with that? It's my godbrother and he wants me to help him. Like, maybe you should go with somebody else. So maybe I can team up with someone else and help him.
Yeah, and commercial is a little bit of a different beast than residential.
Right.
So I would definitely talk to I guess Stevens, whoever the good commercial guys are here. I don't that's not really within my sphere, so I don't have personally anybody to recommend, but
Yeah.
talk to Michael, and Michael will be able to get you in touch with the appropriate people.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So Michael, Michael's there now?
Yeah, he's here right now. He'll answer his phone right now.
Okay. I'll give him a call then.
Thank
you.
All right. Thank you, Denise.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming to class. And again, my name is Andrew Ganas. I'm always happy to help you. My number is 859-948-1982. Feel free to give me a call or text me.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You take care.
Thanks, Andrew.
How do I end?